Well, let's go to Luke Feror. We broke the news yesterday that he is over at Doge. He has read access to the U.S. Treasury and payments flow and has been doing a whole bunch of data science and machine learning to understand where money is going in the government. He's part of this crack team of Zoomers that Elon has hired and staffed on a project to understand how the government works, where money is going. It's been extremely controversial. A lot of people came out in support of Luke. We did, and the rest of the team. And a lot of people were very upset. And so it was very controversial, but we wanted to give a deep dive on Luke and his previous work on the Herculaneum scrolls today. And so we will go through that in just a minute. Jordy, what you
got? One quick note. I think it's worth mentioning for the audience that hasn't been following Doge maybe as closely as some other people, but it's important to understand that Luke is actually not an employee of the government.
Yep.
From what we know, he's an employee of Doge, which you can think of as operating as this sort of personal vehicle for Elon and Elon's team and this sort of initiative to try to have an impact on the government. So think about it more as like almost like a consulting shop, think tank. That's trying. So that's the right way to look at Luke, but we'll kind of get into where he got started.
Yeah. And so let's go through some of these posts. Of course, he famously won a portion of a $700,000 prize for figuring out how to read ancient scrolls that were carbonized by Mount Vesuvius, which we'll go through today. And people are having a lot of fun with this. Armin Tooley says the Doge Zoomers preparing to fire half of the federal government, and it's the Bobs from Office Space, but with Zoomer haircuts, of course. And so people are having a lot of fun with this. It's become a massive political football, even though I think Luke is pretty much just trying to understand where the money's actually going, which is a very reasonable thing for either party to want to do.
I like that everybody had to clarify that he only has read access. It's not like, he's very, he's not just in there, just like he's using it like Venmo or Cash App, just whipping money around. He's just trying to get it. He's just trying to understand the scrolls that are the U.S. Treasury Department's database and incredible paper trail.
It really is like the Scrolls project all over. It's so funny, the similarities. And so Jarvis writes, like 5 people who understand how computers work show up in DC and within 2 weeks restructure the entire system that's been in place since World War II. That's wild. And I love this post.
Crazy.
It's so funny, but it is a testament to AI and data analysis that you can actually do this extremely high leverage work and comb through all these payments. Somebody else was saying that one of the early Doge projects was just get a dump of payments, just get a whole bunch of like just data on where things are going, and just look for the crazy stuff that pops out that seems like really weird. And if you look through the PPP loans, there were a lot of those that went to reasonable, restaurants that were closed down by mandate because of COVID. Made sense that they would need PPP to bridge. But then there were some people that set up LLCs called like Ford Raptor LLC, and we know what that guy was doing. And so you don't need to be a genius. It's not a left-right issue. Like you're leafing through that. You're like, why are my tax dollars going to buy someone a truck? Like this should not be happening. And so hopefully, the Doge team can find a bunch of stuff like that.
And part of it is understanding, okay, let's understand where the money went, and then let's understand how it's being spent. And yesterday we highlighted that out of $700-ish million that was going towards just one university in California from the federal government. So this is U.S. federal taxpayer dollars going to a California university.
Yep.
We both live in California. I'm a product of the UC system. I'm nothing against the UC system, but they were spending 40% of the budget, roughly $300 million a year, purely on administrative costs. So it's not, the first step is let's understand where the money's going.
Yep.
Second step is let's understand how it's being spent. But there's a lot of work to do just on the first part, because this is one of the most complicated systems that I can even think of, right?
Yeah, and there's just been generations of cruft built up. Well, let's move on to Ashley Vance's article, which touches on the Herculaneum Scrolls project. He wrote this back in over a year ago, actually a year ago tomorrow, or maybe today, February 5th, 2024. Ashley Vance and Ellen Hewitt over at Bloomberg write, a few years ago during one of California's steadily worsening wildfire seasons, oof, that hits hard. Nat Friedman's family home burned down. A few months after that, Friedman was in COVID-19 lockdown in the Bay Area, both freaked out and bored. Like many a middle-aged dad, he turned for healing and guidance to ancient Rome. While some of us were watching Tiger King and playing with our kids' Legos, he read books about the empire and helped his daughter make paper models of Roman villas. Instead of sourdough, he learned to bake panis quadratus, a Roman loaf pictured in some of the frescoes found in Pompeii. During sleepless pandemic nights, he spent hours trawling the internet for more Rome stuff. That's how he arrived on the Herculaneum papyri, a fork in the road that led him toward further obsession. He recalls exclaiming, "How the hell has no one ever told me about this?" The Herculaneum papyri are a collection of scrolls whose status among classicists approaches the mythical. The scrolls were buried inside an Italian countryside villa by the same volcanic eruption in 79 AD that froze Pompeii in time. To date, only about 800 have been recovered from the small portion of the villa that's been excavated, but it's thought that the villa, which historians believe belonged to Julius Caesar's prosperous father-in-law, had a huge library that could contain thousands or even tens of thousands more.
Sorry to interrupt. We have to bring back the word prosperous into today's vernacular. It's a fantastic word, and everybody should aim to be prosperous in their own way.
Absolutely. So he says such a haul would represent the largest collection of ancient texts ever discovered, and the conventional wisdom among scholars is that it would multiply our supply of ancient Greek and Roman poetry, plays, and philosophy by many fold. So we're talking about like a 5 or 10x increase in the amount of text from Greek and Roman literature. High on their wish list are the works by the likes of Sappho and Sophocles, but some say it's easy to imagine fresh revelations about the earliest years of Christianity. So it's been a massive goal of, all these ancient scholars to unearth these, and we'll go through how they did it. Jordy, you got anything for me?
No, that's it.
Okay, so some of these texts would completely rewrite the history of key periods of the ancient world, says Robert Fowler, a classicist and the chair of the Herculaneum Society, a charity that tries to raise awareness of the scrolls and the villa site. I love that he's just out there being like, I got to spread the word of these scrolls. I got to get the word out. Someone is going to figure this out. And he landed on it. He found Nat, and Nat put together a crack team and actually figured it out. Basically, I mean, it's not 100%.
Nat, for anybody that's not super familiar, he was a co-founder of GitHub, or he just joined as CEO?
He was CEO. Yeah.
He's CEO of GitHub, a tool that literally every developer that I know uses every single day.
Yep.
And he has a thing for aggressively pursuing passion projects and side projects with not necessarily any sort of direct monetary incentive, more so using his wealth to try to uncover knowledge. And so the scroll is one project that's really exciting. And the one that he went pretty viral for recently was called plasticlist.org, which is similar to what another founder named Cormac is working on, a friend of mine. And what Plastic List did is he went and he spent probably roughly $500,000, so similar to the sort of Scrolls project, and tested hundreds of different popular food products, because he realized that this one protein shake that he was drinking had just like egregious levels of microplastics, and he was sort of traumatized by that. So he's saying, all right, let's test a bunch of different products. And so he's very he's doing exactly what we want other billionaires to be doing. So not just building companies and investing, but saying, hey, let me spend $500,000 to sort of unearth some important knowledge for humanity and pull together some great people in the process. So
yeah.
I'm already excited for Nat's like next project, because he's just gonna keep going.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll pull up a picture of the scrolls. You can see these, and
and John, like, I actually can't see this on my screen, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You should be able to see the screen I'm sharing. The Bloomberg Business Week. This is an ancient Roman scroll.
I see Luke's scrolls, so I think you might be in the wrong tab.
Huh. Oh, did it never? Let me try and share this again with you. Let's go share. Let's go here. And let's go. Is that good, Ben? Can you see that? Bloomberg Business Week. This is an ancient Roman scroll flash fired by a volcano. And we got pictures of Nat Friedman here. And so you can see from this scroll, people have spent hundreds of years trying to unroll them, sometimes carefully, sometimes not. And the scrolls are brittle. Even the most meticulous attempts at unrolling them have tended to end badly, with them crumbling into ashy pieces. In recent years, efforts have been made to create high-resolution 3D scans of the scroll's interiors, the idea being to unspool them virtually. This work, though, has often been more tantalizing than revelatory. Scholars have been able to glimpse only snippets of the scroll's innards and hints of ink on the papyrus. Some experts have sworn they could see letters in the scans, but consensus proved elusive, and scanning the entire cache is logistically difficult and prohibitively expensive for all but the deepest pocketed patrons. Anything on the order of words or paragraphs has long remained a mystery.
So can you imagine you've discovered this ancient Roman scroll and you're just absolutely thrilled. You're like, okay, I'm going to start unrolling it, and just disintegrates like immediately
every single time. And they've tried so many different, like bring in the,
And Mike Solana posted something earlier today that was pretty interesting. He basically said blogs from the early 2010s are actually less recoverable in many ways than these ancient, multi-thousand-year-old scrolls, which is a whole other issue of like, how do you properly archive the internet and all the content we put out so that it can be, preserved for, people, 5,000 years from today.
Yeah.
But anyways, looking a couple Chads here, just a couple Roman Empire enthusiasts.
Yeah.
We love to see it.
He clearly like became actual buddies with the professor on the project, and they're just like hanging out now. And so Friedman isn't your average Rome-loving dad. He was CEO of GitHub, and most importantly, within GitHub, he developed GitHub Copilot, which is their AI coding assistant, and he's been AI pilled for years and years and years, because this was one of the first LLM implementations that actually got traction. And I remember back in, I think it was built on GPT-3, and back in I guess it was like 2020, 2019, 2020, he was saying like every other model, like GPT-3 at the time, people would kind of use it as a search engine or to do copy editing and stuff, but it wasn't quite dialed there. GitHub Copilot was the one product that didn't have super high churn. Obviously that's changed now with things like Perplexity and ChatGPT and a lot of these apps, but GitHub Copilot was the first canary in the coal mine for these LLMs. These AI systems are robust enough to be used by people for a long time.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure a lot of people just know him as an investor because he's now deploying a ton of capital, and his ability to have an idea and then pull together super talented people and just ship it. He did this with another Nat Grossman. So there's Nat Friedman and Nat Grossman, and they shipped.
It's Daniel Gross, right?
Daniel Gross, sorry, Dan Gross, and they shipped an entire cluster just for their portfolio companies because they have another program called the AI Grant, which is like similar to YC type of structure. So I love that, just like having an idea, sharing it publicly, and then just like quickly actually acting on it, just not letting it stay in the timeline is great to see.
Yeah, and so he launches the Vesuvius Challenge, offering $1 million in prizes to people who could develop AI software capable of reading 4 passages from a single scroll. Maybe there was obvious stuff no one had tried, he recalls thinking. My life has validated this notion again and again. So it's this VC investor mindset applied to like ancient history research, I guess. Yeah. And so as the months ticked by, it became clear that Friedman's hunch was a good one. Contestants from around the world, many of them 20-somethings with computer science backgrounds, developed new techniques for taking the 3D scans and flattening them into more readable sheets. Some appeared to find letters, then words. They swapped messages about their work in a Discord chat, and often much older classicists sometimes looked on in hopeful awe and sometimes slagged off the amateur historians. So it was a little bit spicy. Oh, these AI kids going to be able to make an impact here? They don't really know the true stuff. I love that there's these little subplots and battles going on.
You're not a real historian unless you have gloves on and you're sort of trying to piece apart, disintegrating this ancient scroll.
Yeah. This is very disrespectful to the guys who just go Indiana Jones mode and get in there and
I posted
fend
about
off
this.
snake.
You gotta be The only edge, the AI models have eaten the entire internet. So the only edge now is to go Indiana Jones mode and go looking for rare esoteric knowledge and discontinued books, right?
Yep.
But they really did here.
And so you can see a picture here. Before Mount Vesuvius erupted, the town of Herculaneum sat at the edge of the Gulf of Naples, the sort of gateway wealthy Romans used to relax and think. Unlike Pompeii, which took a direct hit from the Vesuvian lava flow, Herculaneum was buried gradually by waves of ash, pumice, and gases. Although the process was anything but gentle, most inhabitants had time to escape, and much of the town was left intact under the hardening igneous rock. Farmers first rediscovered the town in the 18th century when some well diggers found marble statues in the ground.
Wow.
In 1750, one of them collided with the marble floor of the villa, thought to belong to Caesar's father-in-law, Senator Lucius Calpurnius Piso Caesonius, also known but today by historians as Piso. During this time, the first excavators who dug tunnels into the villa to map it were mostly after more valuable artifacts like the statues, paintings, and recognizable household objects. Initially, people who ran across the scrolls, some of which were scattered across the colorful floor mosaics, thought they were just logs and threw them on a fire. No, terrible. Eventually, though, somebody noticed the logs were often found in what appeared to be libraries or reading rooms, realized they were burnt papyrus. Anyone who tried to open one, however, found it crumbling in their hands.
Crazy.
Should I go on? Let's see. Today, the villa remains mostly varied, unexcavated, and off limits. And so there's levels to this project where they get a few scrolls, they scan them, it's very expensive. And then the more that they can unearth, the more they can decipher, the more they can invest in more digging and more scanning, because each one of those is very expensive. I think even just taking the scroll to the CT scan, I think they flew it on like a private jet and like needed to like really like make sure they couldn't check this. You can't check this on United. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to fall apart.
Like, yeah, at least you throw an air tag in it if you're going to.
Yeah, throw an air tag. Yeah. So we have about 800 scrolls from the villa today, but there could be thousands or tens of thousands more. For the past 20 years, Brent Seals, a computer science professor at the University of Kentucky, has used advanced medical imaging technology designed for CT scans and ultrasounds to analyze unreadable old texts. No one else was working on it, and no one else thought it was even possible. Progress was slow. Seals built software that could theoretically take the scans of a coiled scroll and unroll it virtually, but wasn't prepared to handle a real Herculaneum scroll when he put it to the test in 2009. The complexity of what we saw broke all of my software. The layers inside the scroll were not uniform. They were tangled and mashed together, and my software could not follow them reliably. And of course, 2009, this is before the deep learning revolution. There's a lot I'm sure this was more of a programmatic approach, like more algorithmic approach to like mapping the geometry and trying to unroll it. Terrible job for like hand coding, perfect for deep learning. And so by 2016, he and his students had managed to read one scroll, a charred ancient Hebrew text, by programming their specialized software to detect changes in density between the burnt manuscript and the burnt ink layered onto it. The software made the letters light up against a darker background. Sales team had high hopes to apply this technique to the Herculaneum papyri, but those were written in a different carbon-based ink, and their imaging gear couldn't illuminate it in the same way. So massive setback in 2016. It is crazy how long this story's been going on.
Yeah. So, and relevant too. I'm sure Luke is already dealing with this. You know, he had been posting last week, hey, does anybody have any way to process huge volumes of, PDFs through any type of programmatic way? He's going to figure out how to do it with one document format. Then he's going to get, a trillion new documents in another format and be having to do it in the same way. So he's prepared.
Yeah. And this next paragraph is the biggest indictment of current Silicon Valley rich guy, billionaire VC culture. So Nat Friedman finds this guy Sales, who's working on these scrolls. And he had set up Google alerts for him. Nat Friedman's just getting obsessed with Rome. A year passed. There's no news. He starts watching YouTube videos. Really understands that this guy's sales needs money. So in 2022, Friedman was convinced he could help. He invited Seals out to California for an event where Silicon Valley types get together and share big ideas. This is like the perfect thing to send this guy to. Sales gave a short presentation on the scrolls to the group, but no one bit. And Nat Friedman says, I felt very, very guilty about this and embarrassed because he'd come out to California and California had failed him. And I'm sure what happened was like, oh yeah, we just wanted to hear about this crazy stuff, but we really want to put our money in like B2B SaaS. I couldn't possibly throw a 20 in the tri-corner hat for this guy.
It's so funny because many of the people that were pitched there on this idea would go on to donate millions to VCs for Kamala.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Nat goes long on the scrolls and becomes literally a myth himself for uncovering this kind of thing. Thousands of, it's a legendary move.
Yep. And so Friedman proposed the idea of a contest. He said he put up some of his own money to fund it, and his investing partner, Daniel Gross, offered to match it. Seal says he was mindful of the trade-off. The Herculaneum papyri had turned into his life's work, and he wanted to be the one to decode them. More than a few of his students had also poured time and energy into the project and planned to publish papers about their efforts. So now suddenly a couple of rich guys from Silicon Valley were barging into their territory and suggesting that internet randos could deliver the breakthroughs that had eluded the experts. More than glory, though, Seals just really hoped the scrolls would be read, and he agreed to hear Friedman out and help design the AI contest. They kicked off the Vesuvius Challenge on the Ides of March. Friedman announced the contest on the platform we fondly remember as Twitter, and many of his tech friends agreed to pledge their money toward the effort, while a cohort of budding papyrologists began to dig in to the task at hand.
Incredible.
So they lobby the Italian and British collectors for years to scan the first scrolls. Suddenly, the Italians were now offering up 2 new scrolls for scanning to provide more AI training data. With Friedman's backing, a team set to work building precision-fitting 3D printed cases to protect new scrolls on their private jet flight, I was right, from Italy to a particle accelerator in England, where they scanned for 3 days straight at a cost of about $70K. That's a lot of money, but it's such a good investment. It's so interesting. And the whole thing is
way less than the cost of flying private from LA to London, though.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And
good bargain.
Seeing the imaging process in action drives home both the magic and difficulty inherent in this quest. One of the scroll remnants placed in the scanner, for example, wasn't much bigger than a fat finger. It was peppered by high-energy X-rays, much like a human going through a CT scan, except the resulting images were delivered in extremely high resolution. For the real nerds, about 8 micrometers. These images were virtually carved into a mass of tiny slices, too numerous for a person to count. Along with each slice, the scanner picked up infinitesimal changes in density and thickness. Software was then used to unroll and flatten out the slices, and the resulting images looked recognizably like sheets of papyrus, the writing on them hidden. And so these, like the files from the output of this scan, are massive, so it's a perfect case for data analysis and AI. An algorithm that can detect tiny amounts of ink on each little piece of scroll fragment can then combine that data into a unified legible simulation of how the scroll might have appeared back in 79 AD. It is crazy. It's 2,000 years old. That's so old. Like even finding a book from 200 years old that's 200 years old is difficult to deal with. And like the paper might be dissolving. Imagine 2,000.
Yeah.
And so,
it's hard enough to find an original copy of Mary Meeker's internet report.
Yeah, it is.
Truly,
yeah, we got to get that on eBay.
Original, hand printed by Mary Meeker, staple. That's priceless, right?
Yeah.
There's only a few copies left.
It's our scrolls.
Yeah. Those are the real dark scrolls.
Yeah. The drafts that didn't make it to the printer. And so this is where Luke Feror enters the story. Luke Feror was hooked from the start. Feror, a bouncy 22-year-old Nebraskan undergraduate who often exclaims, "Oh my goodness." Heard Friedman describe the contest on a podcast in March. "I think there's a 50% chance that someone will encounter this opportunity, get the data, and get nerd sniped by it, and will solve it this year," Friedman said on the show. Feror thought, "That could be me." I love that.
Yeah,
he's so good.
This is a guy who's looking to get nerd sniped by opportunities, right?
Yes.
You're not on the level unless you're actively looking to be nerd sniped by opportunities.
Yeah. And so there's a photo of Luke here with his hand built PC.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's got some graphics cards in there.
He's grown up a lot in the last year.
He's looking great. Looking great. And so, and this is an interesting twist. Do you know Casey Hanmer? I've actually met this guy. He has a castle in Los Angeles that he uses for his company, Terraform Labs. Very cool company.
Right.
They're converting. They're trying to build, I think it's natural gas conversion from the air using solar. So they're going to put out a ton of solar panels and then basically create like suck carbon out of the atmosphere, use hydrogen, and get natural gas as for energy. So you can use the solar panels to basically generate gas that then you can use, and it's all carbon neutral. So very cool. And he has a ton of really interesting blog posts about his thoughts on global warming and energy and stuff, and where we go from here. So then Casey Hanmer, an Australian mathematician, physicist, and polymath, scored a point for humankind by beating the computers to the first major breakthrough. Hanmer took a few stabs at writing scroll reading code, but he soon concluded he might have better luck if he just stared at the images for a really long time. This is so funny to me. Eventually, he began to notice what he and other contestants have come to call crackle, a faint pattern of cracks and lines on the page that resemble what you might see in the mud of a dried out lake bed. And there's an image here of all the letters deciphered, and the crackle became a big thing in the Discord. To Hanmer's eyes, the crackle seemed to have the shape of Greek letters and the blobs and strokes that accompany handwritten ink. He believes it to be dried out ink that's lifted up from the surface of the page. The crackle discovery led Hanmer to try identifying clips of letters in one scroll image. In the spirit of the contest, he posted his findings to the Discord in June. At the time, Feror was a summer intern at
by the way,
SpaceX.
I love how this is a contest, but everybody's working together. It reminds me of the Russ Ulbricht case where, everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to like pin Ross and like be the guy.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's as much as it's a contest, especially in the case with this girls, everybody's sort of sharing their discoveries along the way. And they're not seeing it as a zero-sum game. They're playing for humanity, right? And also the challenge.
You see, I actually disagree with you because in the Ross Ulbricht case, all of the different groups, they weren't working together well at all. Two of them were embezzling money and doing fraud.
I'm not saying they were working together well, but there was some collaboration.
Totally.
And in this case, you could imagine a world with the scrolls where nobody wants to share anything in the Discord because I want the 700K.
Totally. And there's also this interesting thing where in the Ross Ulbricht case, everyone thought it was going to be this like crazy hacking data analysis that would win the day. But just going on Google and looking back at old posts was like a very key part of the story.
That was key, yeah.
And it's the same thing where Casey Hanmer just looking at it and staring at it for a long time actually helped break the case wide open, which is awesome. So Feror was a summer intern at SpaceX. He was in the break room sipping a Diet Coke when he saw the first post, and his initial disbelief didn't last long. Over the next month, he began hunting for crackle in the other images. One letter here, another couple there. Most of the letters were invisible to the human eye, but 1% or 2% had the crackle. Armed with those letters, he trained a model to recognize hidden ink, revealing a few more letters. Then Feror added those letters to the model's training data and ran it again and again and again. The model starts with something that only a human eye can see, the crackle pattern, then learns to see ink that we can't. Unlike today's large language models, which gobble up data, Feror's model was able to get by with crumbs. For each 64 by 64 pixel square of the image, it was merely asking, is there ink here or not? And it helped that the output was known. Greek letters squared along the right angles of the cross-hatched papyrus fibers. So it's like the perfect case for using AI. And fortunately, because it's not this massive large language thing, he can run it on his computer that he built by hand. He just needs, he doesn't need a graphics card, and he does need to write some somewhat complex code, but he doesn't need a massive data center. You don't need to build Stargate for this, which is great. It's a really cool opportunity. So in August, Feror received an opportunity to put his software to the test. He'd returned to Nebraska to finish out summer and found himself at a house party with friends when a new Crackle-rich image popped up in the contest Discord channel. As people around him danced and drank, Feror hopped on his phone, connected remotely to his dorm computer, threw the image into his machine learning system, then put his phone away. An hour later, I drive all my drunk friends home, and then I'm walking out of the parking garage, and I take out my phone, not expecting to see anything, he says. But when I opened it up, there's 3 Greek letters on the screen. I love this anecdote. It's so good.
Amazing. Somebody was posting that this is the counterpoint to Vivek saying that Americans just are jocks and don't have the work ethic. He's locking in remotely from his phone to try to inch forward and create more progress, from Nebraska, right? Yeah. Solving this incredible, almost impossible challenge. So it's just such an amazing story.
I'm not going to pretend I understand the Saved by the Bell references, but he's clearly the good character in that show. Whatever that means. So around 2 a.m., Feror texts his mom and then Friedman and the other contestants about what he'd found, fighting back tears of joy. That was the moment where I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually going to work. We are going to read the scrolls. Soon enough, Feror had found 10 letters and won $40,000 for one of the contest's progress prizes. The classicist reviewed his work and said he'd found the Greek word for purple. Isn't that amazing?
That's so amazing. So we got to start using "oh my goodness" because
for sure
it's a great phrase and a great substitute for an alternative. But I just wanted to put it out there for our listeners. This is an example of a great side hustle. So next time you're thinking to yourself, I like my PM job. I make a couple $100,000 a month at Meta, but I'd like to do something on the side. Why not just sort of try to crack the code of some ancient scrolls to make an extra $10,000 on the side? It's intellectually stimulating and just a great sort of it's not passive income, but it's a nice, second income stream.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of stories like this. I'm pretty sure George Hotz, the hacker who broke the PS3, the original iPhone, jailbroke the iPhone and eventually went on to develop Comma AI and a bunch of other cool stuff. But fantastic hacker. Early in his career, he would do hacking competitions and bug bounties. So he would go to Facebook and say, I hacked your entire system. Like, I'm a white hat hacker. I'm not going to do anything bad, but can you give me a reward? And they'd say, absolutely. Like, you just saved us millions of dollars. Here's $100K or something like that.
And then was he part of the reason that a lot of these companies ended up rolling out more formal programs around this? Because
probably generally, yes. Part of a trend.
Yeah. And then I think there were even startups created that were just marketplaces for bounties.
Yeah.
At some point or another. I don't know if any of them really broadly caught on, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Cool strategy.
And I think at one point he won a car because of it, or like I think he hacked the iPhone and Steve Wozniak sent him an email being like, "This is awesome. Like you're an amazing hacker." And then Steve Jobs was like, "This is unacceptable. This destroys my business," or something like that. I'm not exactly sure the story, but it was very funny that he was just like, as a kid, he was very young and he was having an impact and making money. Love to see it. So Feror continued to train his machine learning model on Crackle data and post his progress on Discord and Twitter. The discoveries he and Hanmer made also set off a new wave of enthusiasm among contestants, and some began to employ similar techniques. In the latter part of 2023, Feror formed an alliance with 2 other contestants, Yusuf Nader and Julian Schillinger, in which they agreed to combine their technology and share any prize money. I love this. This is the crew that they're building.
Love it.
And so in the end, 18 teams submit entries for the grand prize. Some submissions were ho-hum, but a handful showed that Friedman's gamble had paid off. The scroll images that were once ambiguous blobs now had entire paragraphs of letters lighting up across them. The AI systems had brought the past to life. It's a situation that you practically never encounter as a classicist. You mostly look at texts that have been looked at someone by someone before. The idea that you are reading a text that was last unrolled on someone's desk 1900 years ago is unbelievable, and you are on mute. A group of classicists reviewed all the entries and did in fact deem Feror's team the winners. So he actually won. They were able to stitch together more than a dozen columns of text, while entire paragraphs all over their entry. Translating.
Luke got the email telling him that he won, and he just goes, "Oh my goodness!
Oh my goodness!" I'm fully taking that term and using that constantly. It's so good.
My goodness!
Oh my goodness! It's so nice. Still translating. The scholars believe the text to be another work by Philodemus, one centered on the pleasures of music and food and their effects on the senses. Peering at and beginning to transcribe the first reasonably legible scans of this brand new ancient book was an extraordinarily emotional experience. I love that. They're just like so stoked. It's great.
Yeah.
It
beats slightly changing the color of a button to a different shade of blue and getting 1% increase in conversion. It's close, but it definitely slightly more emotional.
Everyone involved in this story is just so earnest, and that's what I absolutely love about this. There's just not an ounce of cynicism here, and it's just beautiful, and that's why I'm so optimistic about his work at Doge. I think he's just genuinely.
And that's why the people that are actually sending ridiculous messages, hating on him, trying to dunk on him, making him turn his account private. It's like if they just took literally 5 minutes to try to understand his story.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that. How do you position this guy's a bad person, right?
Yeah.
Just a really.
I mean, a lot of those people that are aggressively anti-Luke, they are not reading this coverage. They're reading some clickbait, sensational viral article about how, he has right access to the treasury and he's going to send money and he's just going to steal all the money for Elon.
Well, you saw there was this, I forget which politician. He represents somewhere between San Antonio and Austin, Texas. So Texas-based U.S. representative. He was posting, we need to figure out how to fire Elon Musk. We need to use every bit of political power and pressure and every law to get this man fired. And it's just so funny because he's not an employee of the government. You can't fire him. And he's working under the direction of the White House and the chief executive officer of the country right now. Right. Yeah. And so, And Luke's in the same boat, so good luck firing Luke.
As a point of clarification, it came out yesterday. Elon is a special employee of the government. He does have a .gov email address. I think the exact structure of Doge is evolving, and I think we'll go through a couple different maybe congressional or legal challenges, but it is evolving. But I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people that are anti, a lot of people are pro, even on the left and the right. There's even some people on the right that are like, I don't like that the tech people are in charge. And so it's developing. But we're here to talk about Luke, the brother of the week. And so let's close out with the goals going forward. Barring a mass relocation, Friedman is working to refine what he's got. There's plenty left to do. The first contest yielded about 5% of one scroll. A new set of contestants, he says, might be able to reach 85%. He also wants to fund the creation of more automated systems that can speed the process of scanning and digital smoothing so that you don't have to 3D print the case, bring it over here, bring the CT scan there, dig out better. You need a lot of different people here. It's not just about the AI. The AI is just one piece in the value chain here. He's now one of the few living souls who's roamed the villa tunnels. And he says he's also contemplating buying scanners that can be placed right at the villa and used in parallel to scan tons of scrolls per day. Even if there's just one dialogue of Aristotle or a beautiful lost Homeric poem or a dispatch from a Roman general about this guy, this Jesus Christ guy who's roaming around, he says, all you need is one of those for the whole thing to be more than worth it. What a fantastic story. What a fantastic story.
Amazing.
I love it. I'm so excited to see where the Scrolls project goes.
Yeah, the only bummer, small bummer, is that Luke was kind of a somewhat of, he's infamous already. But he was a bit more of a secret. And now when he does raise his pre-seed round, it will be 100x oversubscribed. And, we'll all be lucky if we get $1,000 slug. But,
yeah, for sure. Just
but
send
it's
the wire
good.
now. Just
But
say,
it's good. Yeah.
Here's
Let's
the
write
check.
him a check.
Cash it when you incorporate at any terms.
Yeah.